Woj with the latest on the Lake Show. University of Michigan coach Juwan Howard recently declined interest in the Lakers head coaching job, electing to remain at his alma mater, where Howard will coach his two sons next season, sources telling ESPN. By the way, that's so cool. The Lakers have a finalist of candidates here: Milwaukee Bucks assistant Darvin Ham, Golden State Warriors assistant Kenny Atkinson, and former Portland Trail Blazers coach Terry Stotts. That also according to Woj. The Lakers are expected to conduct in-person interviews in the near future. They never made a formal offer to Howard, but it's clear that if he had clear interest in the job, his candidacy would have moved quickly to that stage. Stephen A.
Yep.
Do you like any of these candidates for the Lakers job?
No, I do not. But it has nothing to do with any of them. All of them deserve to be head coaches in the NBA. I have a problem with them being a Lakers head coach. In the case of Atkinson and Stotts, I don't think that they would resonate well enough with the players. You have to remember that in the case of Atkinson, he was known as a developmental guy, a guy that really built up players and really was building something in Brooklyn before they let him go. In the case of Stotts, he had 9 years in the NBA in Portland as a head coach. They got to the conference finals once, I believe, and you didn't hear anybody raving about him at all. Not to say that he doesn't know his X's and O's, but again, to me, when you're that head coach, you got to be a leader of men. You've got to be somebody that's capable of galvanizing the troops and getting ready and being able to peel max effort out of them. I don't like that for the Lakers. In the case of Darvin Ham, I believe in this brother. I believe he's ready. I believe he's prepared. I think that he'll do a hell of a job. I was listening to Doris Burke this morning with Keyshawn Max and Jay Will, and she was saying as much, and I completely concur with her, along with Jalen Rose, who spoke up highly about Darvin Ham. And I know Darvin Ham myself, and I think that, he has the potential to be a great head coach in the NBA in the very near future. But I have my questions about the Lakers and what they will do when it comes to a coach. You want to give them the benefit of the doubt, because we all know how I feel about Jeannie Buss, Rob Pelinka. You got some making up to do because of some of the choices that you've made over the last couple of years or so. It's got to be a coach with cachet. You can't tell the coach when to play players. You can't tell them whether or not they can sit a player down or anything like that. It's got to be a coach that has some degree of cachet. If they have the cachet, then that's different. I don't see them giving that to a first-year coach like Darvin Ham. And that's why I'm reticent about him. I have no questions about his capabilities as a coach in terms of knowing what he's doing. And when he goes up in there, he'll have a game plan and he'll try to execute it, et cetera, et cetera. But are you, as an organization, really going to hand the reins to a guy in his first time ever being a head coach and coaching the Lakers? I'm just suspect about that. I think it needs to be an experienced coach with cachet that you can't push around.
But who is that candidate right now?
Me personally, I would think Doc Rivers or Mark Jackson.
Okay.
Or Jeff Van Gundy. And I know Jeff Van Gundy probably wouldn't take that headache. Jeff Van Gundy is living a very good life, and he's like, I ain't got time for no headaches. That's Jeff. That's what he strikes me as doing. Yeah. Doc Rivers loves L.A. If he wasn't in Philadelphia, obviously Philadelphia kept him, so they want compensation for his services, and I don't know if the Lakers have that to give. And in the case of Mark Jackson, I think this is a guy that I don't give a damn what people are saying. There is no excuse for a guy who did the job in Golden State that he did to not have one single head coaching job offer since he's departed from Golden State. I think that's incredibly inexcusable and alarming.
I agree with that, the point about Mark Jackson. He definitely deserves another head coaching job. And we talk all the time with players about fit and how fit matters. And I think this is an example in the coaching ranks about how fit does matter. And to that point as well, timing matters. Like, I don't think this was the right time for Juwan Howard. He's getting to coach his sons. He's at his alma mater. He's going to have his choice of head coaching jobs in the NBA should he go down that route at any point in time. But you've got to choose the right one. It's got to be the right timing and the right fit. And on your points about Terry Stotts, who I think was one of the most underrated coaches during his tenure with the Trailblazers, consistently got that team to overachieve, consistently got that team to the playoffs. Kenny Atkinson did a great job building the culture there. Probably wasn't a great fit with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. So that's probably not going to be a great fit with LeBron James and Russell Westbrook. You have to be able to deal with big egos and star players. The guy, look, if it's not going to be Mark Jackson, to me, I like the idea of hiring Darvin Ham. Number one, he's played in the NBA. There's a cachet that comes with that. He's been part of developing players in Milwaukee. He's been part of championship teams in Milwaukee. He has a great experience doing that. And he's got a personality. I think you need a personality if you are going to coach star players. The other point I wanted to make, just about the Lakers, if you're a coach looking at this job, like, there are short-term concerns and there are long-term concerns. The short-term, of course, is like, how do you build a competent roster around those three guys? How do you figure out how to use Russ and get him to play to his strengths? How do you, look at LeBron potentially at some point having decline and not really having any young players? This is the long-term part. Not really having any young players that on the roster right now that you can develop into star players. There's not necessarily a Jordan Poole on that roster or a Kawhi Leonard when he was a young player for the Spurs, and you don't have draft picks. And so for me, it just is not a desirable job. Like, I look at it that if I'm a coach, and coaches want to coach, like, coaches are addicted to coaching. I get why people want the job, but it's not a desirable job.
Well, let me say this to you. You've said that on numerous occasions. And I'm not trying to say that I definitively disagree, but let's understand something here. If you said to me, I'm going to get the same LeBron, because LeBron isn't the athletic demon that he once was years ago, but the man is such a brilliant basketball player. He'll find a way to give you his 25 to 30 on average per night, okay? Really, Russell Westbrook is problematic because he doesn't fit with this particular roster. But in the end, we have to start asking ourselves a question. And again, none of us are doctors or anything like that. And all we could go by is what we've seen in terms of the durability of Anthony Davis. If I'm a coach, why shouldn't I believe, JJ Redick, that if I have LeBron James and Anthony Davis healthy, then I'm a playoff team? Why shouldn't I believe that? Because I believe that if Anthony Davis is healthy, and I know that's asking a lot, please don't get me wrong, I know this. But if Anthony Davis and LeBron James are healthy, I'm in the playoffs. And if I got LeBron James in the playoffs, who knows what I could pull off because of how brilliant of a basketball player that man is. If I'm a coach, what's wrong with that?
It's a great question. I'm glad you brought this up. First time I was ever on First Take, we talked about the Lakers. Keyshawn was here. We were off air, and I posed the question to you guys, where do you see the ceiling? I don't know if you remember asking.
Yeah,
you see them being a 3 or 4 seed this season. I'm talking about this season.
Right.
And I said, I think they're going to be in the playing game. Now, obviously, because of the injuries to LeBron and Anthony Davis, they couldn't even get in the playing game. And I'm looking at the Western Conference next year. I'm looking at a rising Mavs franchise. I'm looking at a rising Memphis Grizzlies franchise. I'm looking at the Golden State Warriors, the LA Clippers if healthy, Denver if healthy, the Suns, the number 1 seed who won 64 games. A rising Minnesota team. Like, what's the ceiling for the Lakers with this roster, building around this roster, all the challenges inherent with having 3 max players and no young players? Like, what's the ceiling for this roster? Is it a 6 seed? There's nothing wrong with getting in the playoffs.
To me, I would tell you, the ceiling is a 5th seed. I would tell you the ceiling is a 5th seed. But I would say this, and this is the part that I think that we're missing. When we watched the Los Angeles Lakers last year, what we had was a situation where the parts just didn't fit. LeBron James vouched for Russell Westbrook, pushed for him to arrive in Los Angeles, was somewhat deferential to him on far too many occasions in terms of having the ball in his hands, putting him in the decision-making position. Russell Westbrook.
Russ was deferential.
I thought LeBron at times was as well because because he supported him being there is what I'm saying. And you saw, even though LeBron ended up averaging 30 and LeBron was doing his thing, the reality of the situation is that the parts didn't fit and there was a lot of confusion. I don't think that happens this upcoming season. I think everybody knows who they are. And I think as a result, you're going to see LeBron James take the bull by the horn with more definitiveness than last season. And the real question for me is whether or not Anthony Davis is going to be healthy. We can't bank on that, and we understand that. That's why the market for him isn't that strong, because everybody knows that when healthy, this guy's a top 7 talent in the NBA. But unfortunately, when you look at him, you're constantly wondering whether or not he's going to be available. That's really the issue. Outside of that, it's really about the fact that Russell Westbrook he's not a match. How you going to deal with that? I think as long as you got LeBron and AD, you've got the potential to make some noise if you could count on them both being healthy.
Last word here, JJ, then let's get a break.
I've said this throughout the playoffs. the value of having big wings that can play both sides of the basketball. LeBron obviously is one of that when he's engaged defensively. Those guys are more valuable than ever in the NBA. I don't see any of those guys. They traded those guys away. They didn't bring back Caruso. Like, I don't see any way they get those guys on their team, and that's how you win in the playoffs.
That's true.
Yeah. You know what I hate, JJ? Top-heavy rosters. There's a roster building problem
in
the association right now, and, it just really irks me. Still to come on First Take, they were the comment.